Welcome to In Front of Ira.
No, we're so okay. Let's do this again.
Welcome to In Front of Ira.
We're Sabrina
and Torsten,
two historians
and friends
and lovers
of romantic comedies.
And this is the podcast in which we answer the age-old question:
will they or won't they?
Is it or isn't it a romantic comedy?
Anyway, we're still doing this podcast. Fully aware that we have 5 listeners, which is fine. And today we're discussing.
You just skipped over the part.
Yeah, I mean,
I should have. I could have done fake, funny, snarky replies, and you didn't give me the chance.
I'm gonna save all my snark for the film we're discussing today, but because God, do I genuinely hate this film. It is How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days.
All right.
2003 with Matthew McConaughey and Kate Hudson. And yeah. The plot of it is he's a marketing guy. She writes for a magazine that is not cosmopolitan.
But it is cosmopolitan.
Yeah, of course. And she, her job, she's sort of the list girl of the how-to column. And it is sort of trying to do the Shakespeare thing of confusing plots and both of them lying to each other because of various bets and conceits. And so she's trying to find a guy where she can do all the things that guys allegedly hate and sort of push him away by that, and they sort of try to find out how long it takes for him to then break up with her and be sort of really crazy, essentially. Whereas at the same time, and they get set up by some of their colleagues, he's making some bet that he can make a girl fall in love with him. That already sort of contrived how that gets there, honestly. Why would he make this bet for work? To land a campaign with this Diamond or whatever person brand.
Which, by the way, worst slogan that they come up with. Worst slogan.
Yeah. But anyway, so he can't get out of it because he has to prove that she's now in love with him when he takes her to this event at the end. And she can act all crazy. And however, by the end, for reasons nobody knows, they do fall in love anyway. And that is the thing.
It's because they go home and play games.
Yeah, because they play a card game with his family. Yeah.
I'm going to say I didn't hate this movie. I hated literally half of this movie. The first hour was almost unbearable.
Yeah.
It got better, but the first hour I was just why am I here? What is happening?
Yeah. And no, but I legitimately I have seen so many bad movies in my time, and I seen so many mediocre rom-coms, but usually I take something away from it. I've seen bad movies because of one actor, so I sort of stuck around for the actor. With mediocre rom-coms, I sometimes also stick around for some of the cast or some kind of bits that I like and they have good moments. But for me, this movie just has absolutely nothing. It might have to do with the fact that I find Matthew McConaughey to be one of the least attractive people ever, so that's not helping. Kate Hudson is hot, but her performance there, she ticks me off so much that I also can't stick with her. There's some really good supporting people in it, but they barely have any screen time, so it's not enough for me to stick around for someone like Catherine Hahn. But yeah, no good lines either. What I don't know.
I don't hate it quite as much as you do. I understand where you're coming from because, again, the first hour. So the first thing that irked me about this is Kate Hudson as a successful, help opinion columnist.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a great job, but it's
it's not a great job, but
it's not a very. But yeah, oh my God. Actually, she wants to save Tajikistan.
Yeah. She has like political opinions, and she wants to introduce these political opinions to her column in Cosmo. And she's like, "Oh, I have a master's degree in journalism, and now here I am writing how-to things." And
now I am a journalist.
Yeah.
Oh my
From
gosh,
a 2024 perspective,
fuck her.
someone complaining about their not ideal but still well-paid job in journalism just is completely bonkers.
Yeah, especially at a time when like Sex and the City is still on the air and she still makes a ton of money per word at Vogue, and she's fucking thrilled about it, as she should be. And before that writes that column for the New York Star. It never has enough money, and still, you know, like, we're not going to get into the rabbit hole of like how can she still afford all those
It's a fantasy.
So it's a fantasy, but like there is at least a discussion within Sex and the City of her actually like having a career trajectory and being like, her dream job is at Vogue, like, and she writes about relationships and she's never looking down on this. Is exactly what she wants to do. And I mean, I don't know how old Kate Hudson is there, but like, she's also not that, like, she's clearly, this would have been likely one of her first
This is like
jobs
3 years after Almost Famous, I think.
Yeah, I
like
know.
it's like she's like playing the kind of like almost ingenue in that. I mean, not really, but like kind of.
Like,
and now
she's in her 20s, so like she, right? Like, I mean, at
mid-late 20s at latest,
20s.
yeah.
But which
I'm gonna
means
guess 27 is the highest number of years she could be in this movie.
NMA, then she would have already been in her like mid-20s when she got out of university. So she took some crappy internship and then probably stuck with this magazine or got this job after. And like, she's now complaining that she's writing for, which is clearly supposed to be Cosmopolitan, and is not gonna write hard-hitting journalism. Then don't
About
take the job
Tajikistan,
at Cosmopolitan. Why the fuck are you taking this job? Never mind that I'm sure that this is also actually a plot hole for me, and it's just too contrived for how the industry works. If you have a piece, we see her write a whole article that she knows she can't place with Cosmopolitan. I don't think her boss, who wants her to write about relationships, would have an issue if she were to pitch this article to wherever the fuck it belongs. Put it with the Atlantic. I don't know.
It's this weird contrived thing of, I am working for a fluffy women's magazine and I cannot publish the kind of things I want to publish there. And no one has ever told her, well, you can't send this to, like, you're exclusive to us. Like, that's not made clear. If that was made clear, I'd buy it more. And then you go like, why are you not quitting right now?
Again, I don't think her boss would have an issue because it's not a conflict of interest. She's not pitching a column to Elle or like a direct competitor to like not Cosmopolitan. She's writing apparently political journalism about fictional Middle Eastern countries she cares very much about for some reason, and like, had she just said, I will pitch this to wherever, and if that gets her a job somewhere else or like freelance work on the side, like in what world is that a problem?
I don't know. She's just, and this is happening, you know, at the time that the blogosphere is exploding. And I'm like, you know what? Just get a blog. Like, she's in her Maddie Iglesias era. Like, what the hell is happening here? This is just dumb.
Like,
it's dumb. The really stuff dumb that comes after gets dumber because, like, this is the first thing that alienates her to us. She is very accomplished. She is liked by her friends. She has all these opportunities. She doesn't like her job.
Yeah, and she has one of the best jobs imaginable. Like, fuck you. Like, give me your job. I'm very happy to write about relationships for a women's magazine.
Especially if I'm compensated enough. Yeah.
Like, especially now, I'm over like everything else. Like, give me Kate Hudson's job in How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days.
Yeah, and the next thing that happens, right? Because she is supposed to write this article, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, because Catherine Hahn, who plays her best friend / coworker, is always driving guys away with being too intense, which like we're getting ahead of ourselves. That comes back later, and says like, oh, you would never, like drive a guy away because you're Kate Hudson, you look amazing, you're great, so you could never drive a guy away. And so she's like, oh, of course I could, and then kind of in a roundabout way gets this column and is supposed to write how to lose a guy in 10 days, and it's 10 days because that's when the deadline is. And I first of all, why do these people like each other? It's very strange to me. Catherine Hahn is, by the way, this is the thing, and we talked a little bit about the actors basically from the second row. They're all great. Unfortunately, they are not in the movie enough. Michael... Catherine Hahn is so good in this. She is so relatable. We have Tom Lennon, who apparently is in everything. Yeah, and we have my favorite
Chandler's roommate, Eddie.
It took me a long time to figure that out. He's so good. Adam Goldberg, I think is the name. He's just so fun.
I'm glad you told me before, by the way, Chandler's roommate Eddie is in this, because otherwise I would have sat there as like, I know this face from somewhere. But also that makes this really funny because Tom Lennon was Matthew Perry's best friend in what's that called? The time travel movie with Zac Efron. There's a movie where Matthew Perry and Zac Efron are the same character. He just travels. It's not time travel. He turns into 17 again. He turns into a 7-year-old safe again. And in that, Tom Lennon is his best 13
friend. Going on 30 for men.
Yeah, basically. Also, by the way, 13 going on 30, I wanted to mention this because it is almost from the same time as How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. And she also works for a women's magazine in that. But that is her dream job. And she does
also unrealistic in other ways. But yeah.
It is a dream job. She actually likes it. And it's like very interesting that it's such a like zeitgeisty thing to work for women's magazines. To be fair, there is a series from much later that is also much more feminist in these texts, The Bold Type, that I really loved. But like that is always like women working for magazines, and it usually is the dream job, which makes this so bizarre. I don't know if this was supposed to be some kind of pseudo feminist of like, she's too good for this drivel of like makeup tips and relationship advice.
No fluffy stuff. I'm gonna be Christian Amanpour over here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, who are you?
Go
okay,
to
Rory
CNN.
Gilmore.
Yeah.
Like,
So this is the thing that So we can't just
like either of them.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Problem.
We can't just constantly only complain about the movie, but we do need to register our complaints. Okay. And I think for me, it starts with like Kate Hudson. Again, you already said she looks great in this. She's a good actor. It's just that I kind of don't buy her as a relatable rom-com heroine. Yeah.
And I mean, and I mean, I also think some of her like unlikability is actually like, it almost feels like Kate Hudson is playing to that, and she's actually good at that. Like, she's actually really good at playing sort of a crazy person and like a bit of a bitch, and like she revels in those scenes. It almost feels like Kate Hudson is half rebelling against her own movie because she's really good at that. And then once it gets to the more sappy romance part, it's not like she's bad at them, but it feels like it's sort of like she's not in it as much. Like, it's like she's like here to be weird. And she's good at that. That's not the problem. But it's just like, at no point do I root for these two to get together.
I would disagree, but it doesn't happen within, again, like the first hour of the movie. Like, I do get it once they are humanized, when she introduced her family, when the actual rom-com things happen, right? Then for me it starts clicking. They're still not. I mean, they don't have anything on like, your Julia Robertses and Tom Hankses and Meg Ryanses.
Yeah, I don't find their chemistry between each other that great. There's like that one scene.
But there's tons of rom-coms where the chemistry isn't that great, and if the plotting is okay, you kind of make it through this one. So she basically acts crazy. does kind of all the like coming on strong and being kind of very cliche, behaving like a quote unquote crazy woman would behave. So you drive away a guy because that's her job for this column with Matthew McConaughey, and this results. And I think I understand how this was planned. Right? They're like, oh, we're doing this Shakespearean thing, so he wants to keep her, and she wants to drive him away. It feels like kind of like an improv prompt almost, and the only way we can do this is because she's basically like she has the agency and he's just kind of reacting. But at the same time, then that reproduces the whole like women are crazy trope. And also she's just like for basically the first hour or so of the movie tries to drive him away. And it's not funny. It's not creative. It's just boring, annoying things that anybody in their right mind would basically say like there is a store full of red flags that somebody bought and put on her. And also, it's just not funny.
It's basically why am I sitting here for like the vast majority of this movie to watch two people be mean to each other, and then I'm supposed to root for them to get together. And it's not like the friendly enemies bickering, there's chemistry. It's like, enemies to lovers is a trope for a reason, but usually that is built on the fact that they're like, either it's You've Got Mail, where they basically meet each other in different contexts and do actually like each other when it gets down to it. And we already discussed we're going to get to You've Got Mail eventually, and that has issues too. So it's not that. But at least there's the conceit of like, there is a version of themselves that does get along. And I mean, I think they're trying to do this with this like scene where they play cards with his parents, and like you get some sense of who he is or his family is. But it's like, it's just not enough. Like that alone is just not enough to make me think they actually do like each other all of a sudden.
It's one of the few movies that I feel like if I had just started watching this and it wasn't for something and I wasn't like in the mood for it, I would have probably turned this off after half an hour. Because again, the first half of this movie is just, I was watching this on a train and I remember texting you about it and saying that Kate Hudson is just mean to Matthew McConaughey in boring ways. Like it's not enjoyable to watch, and I think it's meant to be enjoyable to watch because it's over the top and she does all these crazy things and she gets to express herself in that way. I think that's how it's meant. The way it comes across is, why is this idiot putting up with her? And then you have like, oh, because he is also a fake because he has to do this for work. And so on the one hand, he is a horrible person because he's also not honest with her. On the other hand, he's an incredible pushover. And the combination of those two just makes him incredibly unlikable until that point where they actually start hanging out. But it feels like there is half a rom-com kind of in this movie where like this movie could be like the first half of a drama where they end up killing each other in the end. And I would buy it.
Yeah. And that would be a more enjoyable film. It would not be a rom-com anymore, but this is where I want us to go. Ideally with both of them killing each other and then they're both dead and then we're finally like don't have to watch them anymore. But like it's just Also there's like some weird where they're still trying to keep a rom-com convention enough of like, when they first hit on each other and they have to almost hook up. And I mean, I think she's trying to do the thing, which is also like, there's so many issues with that of like, oh, we can sleep together now. I think partially it is that like, it is 2003 and we're in a conservative backlash and we can't just have them have a sex scene immediately and hook up immediately. But also it's obviously the thing where she's already playing her game of like, oh, I'm gonna like almost sleep with him and then walk away. And sort of make him wait. And it's like...
Which feels like that's... Like, if that's the way it's meant, but also they just met. So, like, what is it? Is it supposed to be a one-night stand? I don't know. It's just...
Exactly. it's weird that they
cares?
let it get there and then abort it. Like that is the like so narratively it didn't make any sense to me that this is what they start out with. Are we supposed to see that they have enough chemistry that they would let it get there? Then again, people hook up with random people in bars all the time. That alone doesn't mean they had insane chemistry. So it is just weird. There's so many like
It
weird
feels again. It feels
choices.
Shakespearean, and it feels like within the conventions of a play, you need to kind of like take it to a point, and then I think the thing is also it's meant to be funnier than it actually comes across, which I think would be a saving grace if it actually was funny,
and
like the physical comedy of it.
Yeah, also I think they actually do go watch Sleepless in Seattle, right?
Okay, this too, yeah, which again also has a weird scene because like this big guy like wants to fight him, and he also is like has a softy at heart who wants to finish watching the movie. But then why are you challenging these people? Just like tell them to be quiet and stuff. Like it's and he beats up Matthew McConaughey, which I have to say was a nice moment. Like Matthew McConaughey was really annoying in the first half of the movie as well. So I'm like, fair. That's fair. The thing that I liked about the rom-com scene is that it clearly showing what the reference was, and also the movies on the marquee outside of the theater were like 2 Julia Roberts movies and 2 Meg Ryan movies. Like we're not being subtle here.
Yeah, and I think they're trying to actually this film tries to have something intelligent to say about rom-com as a genre, and it's just completely failing at that. Like it feels like I would have bought it more if someone had said it out as like we're doing all of this and we're trying to show up the genre and obviously gender roles, and that makes sense in 2003 because we're at this wave where sort of that neo-traditional rom-com is over. So like the wave of all the Nora Ephron films is over, and the wave of like Richard Curtis films is over, and there's this weird vacuum in the early 2000s where people are trying to sort of subvert genre tropes, and this is clearly where this movie slots into. But then because it sort of pivots after like more than half of it and then tries to do it straight again, it just doesn't hold together anymore.
Like, and it also doesn't run enough. It doesn't run far enough into the direction of parody, basically. Like the thing is, I think the other context here is the rom-com, like this, like the idea of we can be over the top.
Like a lot of Judd Apatow films come out at the time,
but they also aren't. But they also don't want to do that.
Yeah. Like, actually, the Judd Apatow films at the time, at some point, we need to do Knocked Up, which I think is still 3 years later. But, like, the 40-Year-Old Virgin should be around exactly the same time. Forgot when that comes out. But, like...
Also a little bit later.
The thing with Judd Apatow's films that is sort of kicks off that wave and why they're ultimately also the better films, the more successful, is that there's raunchy humor in them, and it's more geared toward, or it's supposed to be geared more towards men, obviously, but also... There's usually still a heartfelt core, but Judd Apatow is much better at selling that, that you still root for the characters. And I mean, it also has to do with the fact he works with people like Seth Rogen and Paul Rudd, who usually are very good at sort of treading that line between these two sort of modes. And this film is just uneven because, if they had turned it into like a complete farce and like really... ramped it up, and I feel like Kate Hudson.
It has screwball. It could be screwball.
It could be screwball.
It's not.
And like really overdrawn, and then it just sort of also like completely, destroys that energy because it then pivots into like, oh, now they have to get together. And I think this is the point where I need to quickly pull up the Roger Ebert review because I forgot to do it. But he reviewed it, and like he unfortunately, or like was just right again. But yeah, it's just so much I don't understand. But then I also looked up who the screenwriters for this are, and there's 3 people whose only other credit is the film 102 Dalmatians.
Not 101, just 102.
No, 102, the bad sequel, the bad live-action sequel to the 101 Dalmatians live-action film that had come out in like 2001 or something, or 2000. So, yeah. Roger Ebert like sums it up for me. I think like this he's also just mad at this movie, and I think he's just over it very quickly, and I get it. He starts it with, I am just about ready to write off movies in which people make bets about whether they will or will not fall in love. The premise is fundamentally unsound since it subverts every love scene with a lying subtext. Characters are nice when they want to be mean, or mean when they want to be nice. The easiest thing in the movies is to sympathize with two people who are falling in love. The hardest thing is to sympathize with two people who are denying their feelings, misleading each other, and causing pain to a trusting heart. This is comedy only by dictionary definition. In life, it is unpleasant. It makes the audience sad. And it's like he was also sitting. He was going through it.
It's again, this is the kind of thing where you realize that something works in Shakespeare, but you are definitely very much emphatically not Shakespeare.
The writers of 102 Dalmatians.
Yeah. From the writers of 102 Dalmatians comes a movie that has a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Comes a movie. Full stop.
Yeah.
Damn is my tagline, I think. No, but anyway. Wait here.
Yeah. It's kind of there is a much better movie hiding inside of this, and there is a screwball, a movie that understands that it's at heart a screwball comedy, and that maybe also doesn't need them necessarily together by the end. I mean, it could be, but it feels like it really kind of, after they break up or basically start going to couples therapy with fake therapist Catherine Hahn, which again, Catherine Hahn, great. She's again, like, if you had not until this point already fallen in love with everything that Catherine Hahn does, like, this is going to do it, because she's just like, she has this very unthankful best friend role, and she just sells it. But again, after they break up, when she's just completely nuts at like a poker night that he has with his friends, where he basically is like, I can't do this anymore, not even for the work, not even for my fake thing, like, I'm gonna break up with her. Until then, the Tom Lennon suggests couples therapy, and then he runs and tries to fix it. But after that, it really kind of switches gear, and the thing that like, it might have worked for me if it had either been a longer time of them, the more screwbally, the more extreme version of like them doing weird but funny things to each other, or if it had just kind of capped that at like maybe a third of the movie, and the rest of it is an actual rom-com, which deals with the fact that these two people lied to each other.
Yes.
And each of them is very much in the right at being very angry with the other. And none of them really deal with this, because also in the end, they kind of have to realize that they've met their match, right? Because each of them lied to the other one. So like, but there would be a movie in dealing with this in funny and maybe more adult ways than it comes across here, because it doesn't actually come across as being dealt with a lot. It feels like the thing that's the thing that should have been the end of the second act. Like they have irreparably damaged their relationship, and I mean there is some of that in that big scene at the end where they basically like make each other sing and like on stage, but it should be much bigger of a plot point.
Yeah, and also like, they both lied to each other, so why are they mad now? You know, it's not one person lying to the other person and then it's hard to get over it. It just doesn't make sense at that point. If you find out you both lied to each other for a work assignment, either you can laugh about it and shrug it off and then probably like part your ways. But even if you develop feelings for each other, you have to recognize that you're both idiots. Like then
yeah,
build
but
it
that's
on
also
that. Like it's.
But that also can be conflict, right? You can be conflict.
Yeah.
No, I was more in the right than you were. What you did is much worse, and both of them thinking that, and in kind of like dealing with that, and then finally coming around. Because a lot of like, let's be honest, most of human conflict is rooted in misunderstandings and in people thinking that what somebody else did is much worse than what they did, and depending on how you look at it, you can see like, you know what, it feels like you're both to blame, and maybe Catherine Hahn could have set them down and told them that, but it's not dealt with it, and it feels like it's not dealt with in a way where their relationship from there also feels kind of doomed because they're never addressing it. And like, you don't have to, you can go like, okay, I guess we like, game recognized game, we played each other here, well done, let's not do that again, and then move on from that. But it's not recognized, it's not dealt with, and that, for me, is kind of the sticking point, because to me this feels like a relationship that's doomed because you're not addressing this very important way that you got together at all.
And I mean, by the end, it's like they're trying to tack on the cliche rom-com ending of you have to chase each other through a city, because she now wants to go, because she finally applied for a job she wants in DC, but then he chases after her on a motorcycle, because of course he raised a motorcycle, and stops her, and then that's where it ends. And it is like, okay, so what? Is she not gonna go to this job interview for the job actually she wants? Who is gonna save Tajikistan if she doesn't go to DC? So what is the outcome?
Also, these very well educated, and at this point in time, like, this is before the financial crisis, these people have prospects, these people have money. You can commute New York to DC. Let's not pretend like that's not an option. Like, it's one of those things that feels like
after 9/11 you now have to go take off your shoes every fucking time. So
you could take the train. Come on. Like, this is like the one fast train that exists in the United States you can take. It doesn't feel entirely earned. It's still a fun scene, but I'm not entirely clear why it needs to be there. I think what's important to understand is, again, the context of this movie, what it's trying to do, right? Kate Hudson has become a star. Matthew McConaughey has become a star. And you kind of like put them in there. And I think part of why it falls apart is the writing. But the other part, and we keep coming back to this, if this was a movie where the chemistry sells everything, you forget about that. You forget about how badly plotted it is. But it's not. The chemistry isn't. I can, take or leave Matthew McConaughey. He's an acquired taste. I don't feel he's very, very believable as rom-com leading man, but apparently other people disagree. Kate Hudson is I don't know, a little bit too not relatable movie star. I feel like maybe the whole like fact that she's a Goldie Hawn's daughter, and we all kind of know that, makes her like, she should be playing people who are not relatable somehow. I don't know where I'm going with this, but it seems to play a role as well.
Yeah, and it's also the thing, I don't think the direction of it is necessarily bad. Like, the director is Donald Petrie, who directed Mystic Pizza and Miss Congeniality, among other things. Like, those are the sort of more standout films that I also think are really good films. And you can sort of see, like, some of.
But again, chemistry, right? It's casting and chemistry.
It's like he's there. I feel like there's people in this who just work against this really, really bad script. And then maybe you also don't know, like, in terms of like producing and like the studio at some point saying that, but we want this to be a standard rom-com, so you need to like turn this into something. Maybe there was a different script of it somewhere, and it was that more screwball-y thing at some point or not. But it just, as it is, it doesn't hang together very well. Is I think the problem as well. It's just trying to be two different things, and both of them are not very good.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying, because like, again, like, I would not be as extreme about this, because again, I watched a lot of bad movies and I watched a lot of bad rom-coms, kind of just as a general preparation for doing this as well. And some of them are worse than this. They're not as enjoyable. And
I don't know.
and it's I mean, it's fine for something like this to exist, but also I think we need to understand why it doesn't work. And why it doesn't work is because it tries to, on the one hand, subvert the tropes, but it doesn't go all the way. Like, it's not recognizable.
Yeah, again, it doesn't.
It's kind of like the thing. This is let me put it this way. There's a whole discussion with like social media and like, you know, media literacy and, you know, what are and one of the really kind of big points that's been going around is like, if you do a parody and you do it so well and you never acknowledge that it is a parody, it stops being a parody. It's just the thing. If people cannot understand it's a parody, it's just the thing. And I think this is kind of half of what ails this movie. They were trying to subvert genres. They were trying to subvert tropes. They didn't quite go far enough, so it's not quite recognizable as that. And then they kind of go back to the classic rom-com structure and rom-com ending, so you just kind of get caught up again in this. And then for that, it's not a very good thing. And if it had tried to be more overt in, we are going to subvert expectations, we're trying something different here, we're signposting this, I would have bought it more.
Yeah. And I mean, so actually the overall reviews and ratings of this sort of agree with me. It only has a 42 from like critics who are probably more attuned to like this is trying to. But what ticks me off with it is like I can stand a bad movie or a bad rom-com because I've seen enough of them and then move on with my life. But this has a 77 audience rating, and I see it constantly as like one of the top rom-coms, and this is what pisses me off, because
this is rated higher on IMDb than 13 Going on 30, FYI.
Yes. And which is, I think, one of the better ones from the time, because again, this is sort of the time where there's a bit of a vacuum. Then like Nancy Meyers is starting to do things a few years later, Judd Apatow is starting to do things a few years later, but like there is a gap of where nothing comes out. And I think this is the only reason this gets more highly regarded by people, because it sort of is in a void of this genre and people are clinging to a few of the things that are coming out. And also in that generation, which is actually my generation, it's like a millennial rom-com that people love, and I just don't. And I mean, I have to say, I saw this the first time when it was new, like a bit not in the cinema, but like I must have been 14, 15 when it was first on German TV. And I already hated it then. And I want to say as a teenager, I probably didn't sit there and like overanalyze why I didn't like, or I probably liked tropey things a lot more and not very feminist things a lot more at that age. I definitely did. But like somehow I always just, I never found it enjoyable to watch them do this to each other. And it's also and maybe also because I already brought up Sex and the City, and I do think it matters that Sex and the City is actually airing at the same time, also because that is a show that's so invested in constantly interrogating sort of sometimes by now outdated ideas of gender roles and sexuality and like sexual politics. But it was also doing it for an older generation, obviously, so that is also explaining certain things. But it feels like that movie exists in that zeitgeist and is trying to say something, but then like ends up just being very offensive about it, because
it doesn't actually have a message.
Yeah, and it's the thing, and like what it actually ends up saying is like, yeah, there's women out there who act crazy, aka they're clingy, oh my god, like, and it's always just women who are clingy and men don't want to be clingy, which is also not true, right? It's like it's such a weird gender essentialist thing, and I think at some point there's maybe a version in there where they actually say something smart about it and don't, and it's just like,
I think you see an inkling there with the guy that Catherine Hahn drove away in the beginning, coming back in the end, because then you realize, oh, this whole thing that we're setting ourselves up for, this whole thing that we're basing this article on, is not an actual real thing that is a thing, right? It's just people don't click. People do things that other people don't like. And sometimes, and this is the thing, like this is with today kind of in the age of social media, you will find recommendations of, oh, what do you do? Or what is a red flag? What is a green flag? What should, your ideal partner be like? You will find everything
Also,
and the opposite, because people are not the same. And every time that you try to say, oh, this is how men are, this is how women are, you're just kind of like trying to reinscribe a slightly more modern version of the like 1950s housewife, man goes to work heteronormativity, and it's just not very interesting.
What I didn't mention, other than like the actual screenwriters or like the 102 dimensions, but this is based on a dating advice book.
Okay.
It actually
just
goes
like the
back
rules
to
or something.
The rules. No, it's literally how to lose a guy in 10 days, sort of like the do's and don'ts of dating. The authors did put a book out that is like the do's and the don'ts, and this is based on the don'ts. And I think this is where it should have been a parody going off of this advice, like self-help book, which would be interesting too, right? But it's also that moment where like there's so many like romance dating advice books coming out in like the late 90s into the early 2000s, and this is on this sort of wave, and they at some point they do try to turn some of these into films, and this is one of those cases. There's also the He's Just Not That Into You,
that's
which
the other
is
one
later.
I was thinking about now.
But like, again, this tells you something about genres, like why you're then trying to turn it into an actual like rom-com if you're going off the don'ts, right? And yeah. And my other what the fuck is, why is Marvin Hamlisch in this? What is he?
I don't know. It was
who paid him?
Oh, it's not one of my songs.
Money?
I'm like, yeah.
Had he like burned through the?
I don't know. It feels like
money.
This feels.
He's an EGOT. He has an E. Why is he
It feels like he knew somebody and he was doing somebody a favor.
He probably is a friend of that director. I don't know. But like, if you look up Marvin Hamlisch again, like he's an EGOT. He went to Juilliard. He composed like a chorus line. If you look at this Wikipedia, there's like my new favorite caption for a photo ever is Hamlisch at age 29, holding 2 of the 3 Oscars he won in 1974. With him are Donald O'Connor, Debbie Reynolds, and Cher. And it's like, why did you have to be in this film? But like, anyway.
I mean, there's a whole... You don't know what a film is going to be sometimes when you just read the screenplay. You don't know what a film is going to be like. And if somebody just approaches you and you even maybe don't have even sides in front of you and they're just saying like, hey, we're doing this Kate Hudson rom-com. Do you want to be in it? That's an easy thing to say yes to. Yeah.
Or of whomever.
Probably of Goldie Hawn.
Yeah. But like, it's, yeah.
It's the thing that I always find weird about cameos like that is you have to tell people who it is, because he's famous, but he's not that famous. He is famous to people who make movies, and you have to make a big deal out of how big of a deal he is, because the people who are going to watch this are otherwise not going to know. And then when that happens, why do you have someone real in there in the first place? It always feels a little bit weird to me, because it feels very parochial in a strange way, right? This is our industry talking to itself, but also we have to, for the benefit of people who have no idea what's going on and why this is supposed to matter, have to explain who this is. There are sometimes ways of doing this where it's funny. Usually it just kind of falls flat.
Yeah. Oh, well. I feel like I'm running out of things to say because I'm just annoyed at it. But I do want to quote one more line from Roger Ebert's review. Matthew McConaughey and Kate Hudson star. I neglected to mention that, maybe because I was trying to place them in this review's version of the witness protection program.
Yeah. It's there. I think this is a lot of the time, right? The perfect rom-com is more than the sum of its parts. This is less than the sum of its parts.
Oh, also, if I do want to rate it something, he gave it 1.5 stars. I'm like, yeah.
I feel like it gets 2.5 from me, but mostly for the supporting cast.
It's just 1.5 is such a petty rating.
It's just like not just one and a half, like
I'm not
like
gonna get it 1
for effort.
for effort.
For effort.
But yeah.
It's taglines. Tagline. Why don't I call them taglines? Taglines. The taglines.
Put up. I lost it. I had it pulled up, and now I lost it. Hang on. It is.
This has better ratings.
One of them is lying, so is the other.
Okay, that's actually not that bad.
Sums it up, but yeah.
I just found out this has better ratings on IMDb than Miss Congeniality, and the world is a weird place.
If it has better ratings than Mystic Pizza, I'm gonna throw some. Yeah. What's your?
My fake tagline is based on another how-to manual: how to lose friends and alienate people.
My tagline is how to lose my interest in 10 minutes.
Also fair. Especially the first half of this movie is it's an ass.
Excruciating.
It's an ass. I do wonder if there's a version of this from stuff that they shot that you could piece together, kind of like what we're talking about with Pretty Woman.
Topher Grace?
Yeah. Yes. Please, Topher.
Can Topher Grace?
Can somebody tag him into this?
Watchable?
When we advertise this episode, just like tag him in and see if it takes.
Hey, do you have some free time? Can you turn this into like a bearable 80-minute movie or something?
Yeah. The thing that I was going to say, if there might be a version for this, because we said for Pretty Woman they shot scenes in the direction of more comedy, in the direction of more drama. If there is one where they might have gone less crazy or more crazy, and if a talented editor who had access to all the stuff that's actually been shot and didn't have a studio meddling to sell this as something, would make a better movie out of this. I almost believe that this is possible. So my wish to the world, if somebody can, go to the vaults and do this, and preferably Topher Grace, then I would be very thankful.
Yeah. Also, does anyone know what happened to Tajikistan?
Do I need to Google now?
I wonder how much that's still for me, and it's also so early on. That's already where I checked. But I mean, it does exist. It's just like it's it's so like what is it about, like this sort of tagged on, because I mean I joked about her caring about fictional Middle Eastern countries, whereas Tajikistan is obviously not fictional, but it's like it's so specific. It's also like, and I mean it's also such a 2003 moment of
it borders Afghanistan. Maybe there's a political statement here.
Yeah, of course. Like I mean it is 2003. Like, Tajikistan is very much exist, but they don't want to say Afghanistan. They don't want to, like, fully put the finger where, like, everything is. But then do that. And, like, I think there's, like, but
that might be the other thing. That might be the other thing. If she's trying to be political, if she's trying to do things, why not be political in the most obvious way and say something about the war on terror? Oh no, we can't do that because that is going to alienate people.
Right? It's like the thing. Also, you should, when you edit this, you should put this bit in earlier. But like, it's just For Tajikistan, I hope someone that is not Andy Anderson tried to save Tajikistan. And
I'm pretty sure
the United States.
Princess of Belgravia went and on a goodwill tour and saved them. I mean, that's the other thing. She's basically in her white savior era there. It's a little bit like, I can tell you what to do. Thing. Like, is this really what we want from a how-to columnist? Is your how-to in how to fix world politics? No, it's in how to make the lives of everyday New Yorkers better. I'm not entirely sure you're qualified.
Yeah, it's like she should just probably write something smart for the New Yorker that isn't all that smart. It's like sort of the thing. But anyway.
Yeah. I don't know. Are there any other Kate Hudson rom-coms? Because like I now wonder
for that.
That could be better.
He's Protestant, like he's a minister, like he's a Protestant minister. That was okay, but I haven't seen it in a very long time. She did another one with Matthew McConaughey. That
not sure we need
saw,
that.
I think.
It's a little bit like the Glenn Powell, Sydney Sweeney, where they're like, "Oh, we want to do another rom-com." I'm just going like, "Why exactly?"
Yeah,
I mean, it's gonna make money. It's just not that the chemistry.
Exactly, right.
Yeah, I don't know. People, I don't know. I feel like maybe I just like have a very different expectation of what chemistry is supposed to look like on screen than a lot of other people. A lot of other people might just be okay with these two people are very pretty. That might be enough. But I feel like chemistry is exactly not that, right? You don't have, like, you have Meg Ryan and Billy Crystal have chemistry, and that's not really like a typical, oh, these people are very pretty, that's why I like looking at them pairing. Not even with Tom Hanks.
Yeah, I was going to say Tom Hanks isn't even the guy that I would like necessarily think of as like a rom-com leading man yet, right? Because he's had such a varied career, and for me, he's much more like a sort of a character actor in so many ways. But he, I mean, de facto, he's one of the biggest rom-com leading men of the generation. But like the same with Billy Crystal, you don't think of Billy Crystal that way, whereas with Ryan, you do, right? It's something, you know.
I mean, David Duchovny in the new Meg Ryan movie is like, they have tons more chemistry than these two. And again, what is chemistry? It's hard to define. It feels very much like a I know it when I see it kind of thing. And maybe other people just have a different definition of what that is. And they thought that these two have chemistry to the point where they want to make another movie. I don't know. Maybe it might have also been one of those things where, like, the fact that they might have had chemistry in real life and worked together really well. Like, you sometimes see these on this kind of thing on press tours where you're like, oh, this is going to be a great movie because they really click. But also, that's different when you have direction and when you have a screenplay, and that puts you in certain positions and it puts you in certain context. It might just not work.
Julia Roberts and George Clooney, and we should do that film at some point, have amazing chemistry with each other in real life, but I think the problem is their chemistry is that they're besties and not romantic. I'm gonna, like, there's a whole thesis in there, like, they're so good at banter with each other. And I mean, like, the film they did together, like Ticket to Paradise, is very much based on the fact that they antagonize each other because they're ex-lovers, but like, I feel like,
but they're also not bantering enough.
No, exactly. Like, their real life chemistry is so much better because they're just friends with banter, and it can be flirty banter, but you also know nothing else is going on, and it feels like that is something you should have, like, they would be a great sort of When Harry Met Sally type couple.
I think we just need more movies. This is me kind of coming back to kind of classic, not just American rom-coms, but like European rom-coms or romantic movies of the 1970s. I think we need movies that are unabashedly people talking. We need things like When Harry Met Sally that are just about people sitting and
like What
talking.
Happens Later.
Yeah, we need more of that. That worked brilliantly.
But apparently the critics don't like that, so we might just have...
Well, unfortunately, Roger Ebert died before he could see it. He would agree with us.
Yeah, he would agree with us. and also apparently Seth Meyers and Amy Poehler agree, who like have the same take on
Moonstruck. Oh, that was funny. Watch that clip. I want to
watch them like talk about more movies, especially when Amy Poehler is jet lagged out of her fucking mind and swore on late night TV, which you're not allowed to do. But yeah.
So lose some friends, alienate some people. Go watch any other movie with Kate Hudson and Matthew McConaughey. Go watch all the other movies with Catherine Hahn for sure. Maybe leave this one behind.
Yeah, although Catherine Hahn is also better when she's not just someone's best friend. It's like,
but she's great. I mean, she's so
great at
good in this,
for instance. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah, she's getting her own show, isn't she?
Yeah, she is. I mean, this has been one of those Marvel projects that have been pushed off, but it's finally coming out. But like, I'm a bit afraid because of the state that Marvel Studios is in, that it's not going to be good. But
That's a whole other thing, but
it is a musical, even though we're not supposed to know that. It's just Patti LuPone doesn't know.
Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Just tell us it's a musical. The people who like musicals will watch it. The people who won't like musicals will. Why are we doing this? Why did this thing with Mean Girls? It's dumb.
Yeah. Just tell people it's a fucking musical.
Tell me it's a musical. If I want to watch a musical, I'll watch it. Just don't. Why are they doing that? This is the weirdest trend.
I do not understand. Anyway. Oh well.
Anyway, Catherine Hahn is great. This is a Catherine Hahn appreciation portion of the podcast.
Marvin Hamlisch is also great when he composes
also great.
Things and cameos and things. I mean, he's not the problem with this movie. Maybe Marvin Hamlisch's cameo is actually the best moment in this movie.
Now, on that incredible observation, we say goodbye.
Exactly.